All right, we're going to get going. Hola, hello, buenos dias, good day. My name is Paul Rosen. I am the executive chairman of Global Go, Cannabis's leading global advisory, shining a spotlight and a focus on a number of emerging cannabis jurisdictions. Welcome back to our webinar series. I'm so delighted today to introduce today's topic, a detailed update on Mexico's legal cannabis market. For those of you who have been paying close attention to the cannabis industry, you'll likely know that Mexico has been getting very close for now a number of years towards bringing in what will be the largest single adult use cannabis market in the world, with close to 130 million citizens. The cannabis industry waits with bated breath for the anticipated progression of adult use cannabis in Mexico. It's fair to say that some of our content providers today have been tracking and participating in the industry in anticipation of this imminent watershed event for now several years. As we all know from other regulated jurisdictions, there's a bit of a delta between the political will to bring in adult use cannabis and then actually getting the regulatory and legal format and platform in place to host such a dynamic emerging new industry. That's exactly where Mexico is right now, just about at the goal line, if you will, to use a soccer analogy, for what is going to be probably a transformative, dynamic, and consequential market. We're going to learn all about that today with some of the great thought leaders and participants in the emerging Mexican cannabis economy. Let's get to our program. Before we start, I just want to invite everyone who's attending today to consider, in lieu of a webinar registration fee, making a donation to today's preferred charity or philanthropic enterprise, to use a better word, the Last Prisoners Project. The Last Prisoners Project, with their team of industry leaders, criminal and social justice advocates, policy and education experts, and leaders in social justice and drug policy reform, are committed to freeing every last prisoner currently incarcerated as a consequence of the unjust war on drugs. And this is probably the most important single initiative that our industry has. While we all look forward to participating in some of the prosperous economic benefits of adult use cannabis, let's not forget all of the people that are still incarcerated around the world, frankly, but certainly very much so in the United States, for doing the very thing that we're about to celebrate today. I strongly encourage everybody to please dig deep. That is great money, great karma. You're going to help rehabilitate and release people that have no justification to be in prison. With that being said, we'll get to today's itinerary. I'm so thrilled, honored, and delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Steve D'Angelo. Steve needs no introduction, but humor me for a moment while I do introduce Steve. Some people have called Steve the father of the legal cannabis industry. I think that's probably accurate, but in no way exhaustive. Steve's role in the industry is impossible to overstate. He is the industry's conscience. He is the industry's greatest pioneer. He is the person that has dedicated his whole life since he was a young adult towards cannabis reform, sensible cannabis reform. And he has, quite frankly, been on the front lines of this transformative political battle that's taken place at a time when it wasn't popular, all the way to today, where cannabis is ascension and benefits are now seen as self-evident. Steve's list of accomplishments are too numerous to properly catalog during my introductory remarks, but some of the things that Steve is very well known for includes co-founding Harborside, one of the first 6 dispensaries licensed in the United States, and now a publicly traded company on the Canadian Securities Exchange, a founder of Steep Hill Laboratory, the first cannabis analytics company, a founder of ArcView Group, the first dedicated cannabis investment network. Steve is the author of the Cannabis Manifesto and played a key role in the passage of Initiative 59, which was Washington, D.C.'s medical cannabis law, as well as the passage of Proposition 64. Cannabis is adult use law. Steve has also been a transformative figure in Last Prisoners Project, bringing his passion, his advocacy, and his social conscience towards releasing people that have been incarcerated unjustly during the war on drugs. Relevant to today's topic, Steve just came back from a lengthy multi-week tour of Mexico, speaking to local communities, empowering local farmers, meeting with regulators, and doing what only Steve can do, which is extending the understanding, the potential, and the potential dynamic social change that sensible cannabis reform can and will unleash on the world, and certainly on Mexico. Without further ado, I'm so thrilled to introduce my friend and my esteemed colleague, Mr. Stephen D'Angelo.
Thanks so much for that incredibly kind introduction, Paul. And it's a real pleasure to be with all of you here today. As Paul mentioned, I did just come back, excuse me, from a couple of weeks in Mexico. And I'd be happy to tell you, share a little bit of my experiences with you in just a moment. But I wanted to take the first part of my remarks just to urge everybody not to underestimate Mexico here. I think that Mexico is going to be a global force in the industry worldwide. And let me just recount some of the reasons that I think that. Mexico is really the first major Spanish-speaking country to legalize cannabis, and it is the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. It has the largest university system in the Spanish-speaking world. It has the largest stock exchange in Latin America. It is the media and entertainment giant of Latin America. It has the second largest pharmaceutical industry in Latin America. A huge construction industry. Ag land, they can get 2 or 3 cannabis crops in per year. An existing agricultural export sector that's very sophisticated and well organized. An incredible array of microclimates that are going to be ideal for growing really, really high quality cannabis. Low labor costs, hundreds of thousands of experienced cannabis farmers. A vibrant and growing domestic market, I'll talk a little bit about that. A really well-established global brand for cannabis. A free trade zone with Canada and the United States. And more than enough capital to finance the Mexican cannabis industry to the same degree, or perhaps beyond the degree, that the Canadian industry, which is taking over the world, has been financed. A lot of that capital is still underground, but if there was an amnesty that would allow that capital to be normalized, it would represent another huge advantage that Mexico has. And one of the conversations that's going on is over what happens to the people who have been controlling the cannabis trade in Mexico for a number of decades. And I think that if I had an opportunity to speak to them, what I would explain is that the underground cannabis market, particularly in Mexico, is a shrinking pie as the United States produces more and more of its own cannabis. It's not worth fighting for, right? But legal cannabis is a growing pie, and I believe that cannabis is on the way to becoming the most valuable product sector in the global economy. So those folks now have an opportunity to make a decision to either be like Al Capone and end up gunned down on the streets, or to be like the Kennedys and potentially start putting your children into very well-respected spaces in society. So I think that all of those things really position Mexico for this leading role, and I'm really excited to see it claim that destiny. Part of that's just because I love Mexico. I think I've loved Mexico before I ever even set foot there, because growing up as a kid in sterile suburbs, Mexico was always this place of possibility of where the food was spicier, where the colors were more vibrant, where you could get cannabis and things could happen that didn't happen back where I grew up. And this trip to Mexico was as magic as all of my time has been. The first half was spent in Mexico City, where I attended Expo Weed. And Expo Weed is an event that's been going on for several years. This year, it was a bit constrained because of COVID. But the notable thing about it is that, because we've seen this sort of slow motion legalization in Mexico, there's a really vibrant gray market that's sprung up now. And there are dispensaries in Mexico City that look and feel just like dispensaries that you would walk into in California or Oregon. There are Mexican brands that are already out, that are already claiming market share, that are already building brand equity and recognition. I don't see this stopping. It's probably going to take a couple more years before you see formal licenses issued. But I think the gray market economy is just going to keep on galloping ahead during that period of time, and some interesting questions about how all of that will be resolved are going to be raised. The second half of my visit was spent in Oaxaca, and Oaxaca is notable. It's one of the most southern of Mexican states. It is the state that has the largest indigenous population. 3/4 of the municipalities in Oaxaca are ruled by what are called usos y costumbres, or traditional tribal law. And most of the communities, the indigenous communities in the countryside, were closed to outsiders because of COVID. And I was just exceptionally fortunate to be invited into some of those communities by the organizations that run them. And one of them I'll share with you was to a farming community called La Pe. It was a very interesting community. On the way in, you go past the ruins of a old hacienda of a big wealthy landowner that was just torn down and destroyed during the Mexican Revolution. It's just been kind of sitting there ever since, maybe as kind of a warning. And the people of La Pe are just beginning to embrace cannabis. My partner in Oaxaca, who's a agronomist who's been working with the communities for a long time, took a bottle of cannabis oil, CBD oil, to this community about a month before our visit, and had given it to the mother of a child, Sebastian, who had intractable childhood epilepsy. He was a teenager, but he barely could walk. He was not engaged with people, not verbal. And of course, the CBD just really transformed his life and was tremendously effective for him. And, in a village the size of La Pe, everybody understands each other's business. And when you have a remarkable recovery like that, it becomes the talk of the town. And basically the town really became endeared and in love with cannabis because of this experience, and decided that they were going to plant legal cannabis crops. And so I was invited to a ceremonial initial planting of their first legal cannabis crops, a medicinal crop, of course, and an industrial hemp crop. And I'll just take another minute or two here. I know I'm running close to my time, but it was such a moving experience. You can check it out on my IG feed at steve.d'angelo, see the video of it. But basically, the whole town took part in these ceremonial plantings, about 75 or 100 people, ranging from 2-year-old toddlers to 85 or 90-year-old grandmothers and grandfathers, who all took part in it, who all picked up a shovel, who all built living soil, who all helped build the beds. And I was given the honor of planting some of the first seedlings. And you could just feel the hope, this palpable sense of hope amongst the people of La Pe as those plants were going into the ground. And it's just, for me, really, really special to see finally, after decades and decades of working on this, the cannabis medicines, this plant finally making its way not just into markets in the United States and other first world countries, but actually getting into isolated and marginalized communities and getting into the hands of people who really need it, and it's just making a tremendous difference there. And I think there's a lot that we have to learn from the experience in Oaxaca. Be sure to check out my feed and hear more about it. I think that that there's a lot of lessons to be learned both directions there, and I'm really grateful for the time I spent in Mexico and especially the time that I got to spend in Oaxaca. And I urge any of you who have not had the opportunity to engage in Mexico yet to definitely do that. It's going to be a giant in cannabis, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful scene.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve, so much for everything you have done for our industry and for sharing your most recent experience in Mexico. That sounds incredible. I had a similar experience in Jamaica years ago where I was able to attend the first legal planting of a cannabis plant in Jamaica in close to 100 years, which took place at the University of West Indies on 4/20/2014. And there was a lot of hope, but it also is fair to say that hope doesn't always translate to the outcomes that we want. And in order to translate hope to outcomes, we're going to need the industry and the operators within that industry to really bring a strong voice to make sure that the strong expectations and hopes for what this industry could actually provide Mexico at both a macro and a micro level actually takes place. And we're just grateful for your advocacy. Steve, no doubt that somehow there's a connection between what you've done in your career and what's actually happening in Mexico right now. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go a little bit deeper now. We're going to introduce our panelists. I'm so delighted to introduce another friend of mine. Those of you in the cannabis industry must think we're all friends. The answer is yes, we're mostly all friends. We've had to create solidarity amongst each other before this was so in vogue and popular. When it was a little bit more outre, you really needed to work with people that had a shared value set. And our moderator today is Senor or Mr. Luis Miguel Lopez, the Business Development Director of Access Ventures, a leading consultancy focused on the Mexican cannabis economy, and it should be said, a partner affiliate of Global Go. In other words, Luis and his team in Access are really our partners at Global Go, as we also participate in providing services and thought leadership towards the Mexican cannabis economy. Luis and I met 4 years ago in Toronto when it appeared that Mexico was on the precipice of bringing an adult use cannabis program. I remember vividly meeting Luis, and his excitement was contagious, and he really had, if you will, the tiger by the tail. And here we are 4 years later, and it's not enough has changed, but one thing that's consistent is Luis's commitment toward the industry has been irrevocable and has been tenacious over the last decade. In addition to his role at Access Ventures, Luis has a seat on Bella Green Ventures, a pharmaceutical cannabis startup company based in Mexico. He is president of Canna Invest, a business summit that explicitly promotes social responsibility while promoting investment for the cannabis industry. Luis's credentials are too exhaustive to go in. He has got an incredible education. I won't waste my time reading it to you. Luis can speak directly himself. Luis, take it away. Introduce our panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. It's a real pleasure to be with you all here and also sharing this event with such a wonderful people, as you say, all of them friends, and nonetheless very experienced and also with a long period of time struggling in the cannabis industry. So I would like first to introduce our friend Inigo Olavarri. He's our partner in Global Go Mexico. He has a very long career and story in the Mexican cannabis environment, being one of the first struggling people before Congress and before the executive power in Mexico and before the Supreme Court, going representing the cannabis community before the hearings that finally took us to this moment here in Mexico. Inigo, I don't see you.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
I'm here.
Yeah, Inigo is a real important person in the cannabis movement in Mexico. And it's a real honor to be a partner with him. And I would like to ask a first question to Inigo. How is the Mexican regulation right now? What's the moment that we are living? Because there has been so much exciting in the whole cannabis industry in the world. Many people thought that we finally legalized and that licenses were around the corner for everybody. Please, Inigo, I would like you to give us a context of what's the exact moment that we are living in Mexico.
Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words, Luis. And hello to everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very grateful to participate in this conversation with such a nice panelists. And I hope I can learn from all of you and to share a little bit of what we know. So asking your question, Luis, well, the regulatory situation for cannabis in Mexico. First, we must understand that we are dealing with two different regulatory processes. First, there is a medical regulation for cannabis, which was published on January 12th of this year, covering the production of cannabinoids to supply health research and the production of medicines derived from the cannabis plant. Secondly, there is a legislative process to issue the federal law to regulate cannabis, which is not yet enforced and will regulate the recreational and industrial use of the plant. So currently, only the medical use of cannabis is legal. However, there is a judicial mechanism known as the amparo trial, through which you can obtain the authorization from the Federal Commission Against the Protection of Health Risks in order to possess, transport, cultivate, consume, and perform legally all activities necessary for your personal consumption. It's very important to remember this last word, personal consumption, right? Because if you involve someone else in these activities, that is still a felony. And if you don't have this federal resolution from the court, you can't do or perform legally any of those activities. So yeah, there is a big misunderstanding right now about if it is legal or if it's not. The truth is that it's legal if you are producing medicines.
Inigo, just to clear the whole situation up, I just got a call a couple of weeks ago from a Canadian friend telling me that he was interested on buying a cannabis company in Mexico with 2 licenses. What would you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. We need to be very careful because a lot of people is selling bubbles or smoke, you know, they are, well, they are making illicit activities. Even some public servants are kind of selling these licenses. But I have seen those licenses, and they are, you know, terrible. They don't have like the legal dispositions. They are something unique. You know, you can't. You should hire a lawyer, and you have. You need to file the process that is established in the law. You can't think that someone is going to sell you a license and you are going to be able to do everything. Right now, it's really complicated for you to get those kind of licenses. Or maybe if you are a laboratory or drugstore, yeah, for sure, they have a license to perform the activities a laboratory perform, but they can't use cannabis if they don't have specific type of licenses. So we need to review what kind of licenses they are talking about in order to know if those licenses are real or if they are selling smoke.
But just to be clear, so far the authority in Mexico has not yet issued any cannabis license for any company.
Well, that depends if we are talking about the type of licenses that are referred in the federal law that is not yet enforced. So you can have one of those licenses. But if you are, as I was saying, a laboratory and you have a license to transform or to use controlled substances, yes, you can do activities with cannabis. So it depends on the type of license. Yes, there are some laboratories that are right now filing health registrations in order to produce medicine with cannabis. There are also other companies that are importing cannabinoids and selling them through their drugstores, but with highly demanding processes, and you have to respect, well, the law that is already enforced. You know, we need to see those licenses to know if they are real or they are just made up.
Okay, thank you very much, Inigo. Thank you. I would like to introduce another great friend and experience and expert on not only on the cannabis regulation, but also in the whole Mexican, what I would say the counterpart of the Mexican FDA that is named COFEPRIS, our friend Cuauhtemoc Ruiz. Cuauhtemoc Ruiz, he was the number 2 of COFEPRIS, the counterpart of the Mexican FDA, as I said, and he has worked in the first studies that were placed by the Mexican government in order of analyzing how the environment of a legal cannabis industry can be established. So Cuauhtemoc has been working for more than 7 years on the cannabis context in Mexico, not only from recreational use or the pharmaceutical use, but the whole spectrum of cannabis. So having said so, Cuauhtemoc, please, I would like you to please explain us what's the situation now of the new law that we call it the whole enchilada, because it's a very large view and long-term view law that is being pushed by some legislators in Mexico. Some of us think that we are in the last mile of full legalization in Mexico. What's going to be your opinion about that?
Hi everyone, how are you? It's great to be here with all of you, sharing with all you these great panelists. And thank you very much for your question, Luis. Well, as we know, the legislative process here in Mexico and the cannabis legalization process has been long. I mean, I was there when President Peña Nieto gave this great speech at the UN in New York, where he said that cannabis should be legal in the entire world and Mexico will legalize cannabis. And that was back in 2016, you know. And well, we have been through a process of a long years, but well, we've moved forward, and I believe that's good. And now what we are
O si yo le entendí algo mal.
Sorry, I don't know. Sorry. Sorry, there was some noise there. Well, we've been through a very long process, and now we can feel like we're on the last mile. We had a decree approved by the Senate last year, and it was discussed by the low chamber of representatives here in Mexico. And well, they made some changes on that decree that resulted on a new discussion in the Senate. And well, right now that discussion was going to take place this month. They decided they should take it to September. But well, we're moving now forward on a legal document that has established some criteria to be developed for the companies for specific areas. Now we can see some specific permits, some specific way to arrange the chain of development of cannabis. So I believe we're moving forward. We're still working on the discussion. There's a lot of things moving on the chambers here in Mexico. But I believe September will be a very good day, very good month for cannabis. I'm very excited for that. And I believe there's an industry that still can be developed on the area that we're working right now. As Inigo was saying, there are people and there are many companies that are now investing and are now working on cannabis, on research and development of products, and working with the authority to establish some criteria and parameters for the cannabis products that will be developed here in Mexico and that could be imported and exported to other countries. And I believe that's very important, setting up a very strong regulation that can give certainty to the regulator and also to our customers. Hello? I think we lost Luis.
Hey, all right. Well, hello. It's Paul Rosen again. Hopefully Luis will be able to join us in a few minutes. But let's continue on. Just give me one moment. Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to just start group questioning here. First of all, thank you for all of our panelists. Mauricio and Mr. Ruiz, please, we're welcoming you as well. We're going to try to get everybody on camera here at the same time. And let's start going through some additional questions until Luis brings us back. So first question, I guess I will aim this at Mauricio. First of all, welcome, Mauricio. It's great to see you today. What's the perspectives for the sort of the cannabis pharmaceutical industry in Mexico, separately from the adult use? Could you give us a little bit of leadership and perspective on that, please?
Yes, for sure. Thank you very much, Paul. Nice to be here with you. Well, let me tell you about three very important things. As you told us, Mexico have a very huge opportunity to have a very good raw material for the cannabis industry in the world. We have everything to do the best raw material that we can do for the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry, it's very tight around the world. They ask for a lot of things. They ask for a DMF, that is a drug master file, how you process the cannabis oil. You need a GMP facility. You need a lot of protocols with patients, because I have been in all around the world, in all the countries that they have the medicinal cannabis approved, and I never find anything with substance. You know, I always hear about a person that the cannabis helped him. Another person that have a very weird disease and the cannabis helped him. But I never see a real study with a lot of patients that we have the documents that we make a protocol to find the real scientific issue that we need for cannabis. What are we looking for with in the cannabis industry? We are looking for therapeutical actions. If we prove therapeutical actions with our medicines around the world, we will be in another level. But what happened? Neither in Canada, neither in the United States are asking from the FDA, because it's not federal legalized. They are not asking for these kind of issues. They will ask these issues when the FDA will be approved all the cannabis industry federalized in the United States. So the game will change, and will change very fast, because a lot of products that now is called medical cannabis will not more exist. It's for sure. So where is the opportunity here in Mexico? The opportunity here in Mexico is that if we want to be in the medicinal cannabis around the world, we have to do 5 things. We have to invest in genetics. We have to make pharmacokinetics. We have to make protocols with patients, protocols that be written and operated by federal hospitals in Mexico. We have to make a raw material as we make any raw material in the pharmaceutical industry, as an ampicillin, as any raw material that we need for the traditional pharmaceutical industry. We have to make the same way cannabis. For me, cannabis, it's an API. What is an API? Action, product, ingredient. Okay? So I think that if we are in time to make this happen in Mexico. I in one of my companies, I already have protocols. I already have pharmacokinetics. I'm looking, because as you know, and I want to be very clear. Cannabis help a lot of help for a lot of already known medicines, that for a lot of therapies, okay? But cannabis doesn't, and I will tell you twice, cannabis doesn't make a disease disappear, okay? So this is very important, but because cannabis is not a miracle. We have to treat cannabis as a very strong helper to a lot of therapies that a lot of persons in the world already have their own medicines, and they don't have good results with the products that they are taking. They need another. They need another option.
So you are mentioning that many existing pharmaceutical products could be complement with cannabis ingredients.
For sure. That's the point. But if we want to put cannabis in another molecules that we are already using in a lot of therapy, we need to have DMF, GMP, and treat the cannabis as a API as an active product ingredient.
So what do you think that the Mexican pharmaceutical industry position is about cannabis right now?
Well, let me tell you something, Miguel. Mexico is the second country in the world with more generic drugs in the world after India. Our growth is in 2 digits per year. Okay, Mexican industry is prepared. The thing is that all the Mexican owners of the big pharmaceutical industry are waiting for the legislation. We are just waiting. We are preparing a lot of things, a lot of great things, but it's very thin, the line between the pharmaceutical industry and when you put cannabis in this game. So we have to be very careful.
So what about the future, for example, for any pharmaceutical company that would like to be in the market related to nutraceuticals, food supplements, cosmetics, etc.?
I think that the potential is very big, but the only thing that we have to take care is to make a real good raw material with all the documents that any supplement, food supplement, or herbulary medicine or cosmetic needs. Okay, it will be very difficult to enter in this industry just making some oil without documentation and selling a miracle oil for your face or a miracle oil for your food supplement. We cannot do that, but the potential it's very, very big.
Okay, thank you very much, Mauricio. Thank you for your participation. And I would like to introduce also Mr. Gerardo Agras. He is the current president of Global Go Mexico and Access Ventures Mexico. Mr. Agras has a long career as an entrepreneur, very well known in the pharmaceutical environment in Mexico, but also in the track and trace industry in Mexico. He's been related to the track and trace solution established by the Mexican government for tobacco and alcohol and other products that are being taxed right now with his technology that has been approved and adapted to the Mexican needs. So I will not say more about his long career. Gerardo, we would like to have an insight as an investor. How is the competitive landscape today in the Mexican cannabis industry? What are you seeing? What's happening in the investing environment in Mexico towards cannabis?
Sorry, thank you, Luis. Thanks, Paul, Stephen, of course, your titans of the industry. Thank you, the whole crew of Global Go of putting together this first webinar that we're participating as Access. And of course, first, let me tell you from an investor point of view, there's always the thing about the certainty of the legal framework. I think that the current administration and the Congress has done a lot of time and effort putting together a comprehensive reform that can really put Mexico in the center of the cannabis space. I think that the legislation and the legislative reform that today is being discussed by the Mexican government will provide a lot of certainty and will integrate the Mexican market for the whole supply chain. So I think that we have to stress that the new legislation will definitely be important for investment, and it will also be a lot of disruption in terms of the whole supply chain. It will be integrated, and it will provide a lot of certainty for new investments. I think that we have, and let's also talk about that, that we have sound industries in Mexico. The farm industry, the agricultural industry, and the chemistry industry are very solid right now. And I think that the cannabis industry will take advantage of having industries well settled and well established here in Mexico that are complying right now with restrictive regulatory process. As Mauricio just talked about, I think the farm industry from a long time has been dealing with a set of regulations and a set of compliant processes that will be not left behind in the cannabis industry. So from a perspective in the competitive landscape, I think that the barriers to entry will be less down. I think also the challenge is how we're going to deal with the organization crime and all the illicits. And I think one of the spirits of the law is, of course, to seek for social equity and, of course, to protect investment. And from that point of view, I think that there are 5 key industries that will be benefit and that will be strongly boosted by the cannabis industry also. Of course, it's going to be pharma. The hemp industrial industry will be also benefit from the cannabis reform. We have a solid agriculture organizations, and we are geopolitical, have a privileged space globally, and I think that we have the opportunity to develop some of the industrial hemp that cannot be left behind in the conversation. Also, technologies that can also secure the benefits of cannabis. As you just mentioned, the track and trace industry will be key to secure the whole supply chain. And that will be one of the spaces that I would like to highlight, because if we don't have certainty in the whole supply chain about the quality and about the certification and about the whole part that consumers can also benefit from the visibility and transparency of the markets, I think that the track and trace space will be also a great place to be and to invest and to look, because governments, local governments, and the regulatory bodies will also take chance and will be helped by these technologies to secure. Also, another industry is the lifestyle industry, that is also with a cultural side from the cannabis point of view. I think that there's a lot of brands that want to penetrate the market. I think that the new law established a set of regulatory licenses. I think that the licenses are very well established in the law. The regulatory framework, that's what we want to impact and shape hand by hand with the regulatory agencies. I think that that's a challenge that every nascent market has, is to walk industry and the governmental side side by side, partnering together. And also, I think that genetics, of course, what Mauricio was planting is the name of the game, is also how you do all the investment in a solid and sound IP portfolio. I think that's one of the Paul and Tom Sauber, what they have been adding value to the industry, is how you make this business model kind of different, of having genetics portfolio that can you really use in every jurisdiction on a global base. So trying to write up, trying just to resume, I think these are like the key industries, and also to be proud that the Mexican government is currently doing a great effort to put together the best comprehensive reform in place.
Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you very much for your insight. I would like to ask Cuauhtemoc and Íñigo, what is the timing of the future regulation here in Mexico? What do you foresee in the coming months? Are we going to have a regulation before the end of the year, or we will have to wait for next year?
Okay, well, I'm gonna answer first. I think it's really important to remember that we have a regulation right now, because sometimes we forget that, right? We have a medical cannabis regulation. So we can focus on the future or we can focus on the present. So yeah, if we are talking about the legislative process, what is happening right now in the Senate, well, maybe that could happen this year, or maybe it could happen the next year, right? I hope it happens this year. Well, strictly talking, they have until this week to publish the federal law. I have this impression that it's not going to happen. So that's why I'm saying let's focus on the medical regulation. So the medical regulation is not the same as they see this industry in the US or in Canada, because, well, here in Mexico, the general health law has specific dispositions, and here in Mexico, we have to focus on that, right? So by medicinal use of drugs according to general health law, we must recognize any substance or mixture of substance of natural or synthetic origin that has therapeutic, preventive, rehabilitative effect, that is presented in a pharmaceutical form and is identified as such by its pharmacological activity, physical, chemical, and biological characteristics. In this sense, the authority will only authorize as medicines any product that can demonstrate that their production process and the substance they contain meet the required safety, efficacy, and quality characteristics. In this context, as an example, we must demonstrate the therapeutic efficiency of the product through clinical protocols or bioequivalent studies. What I'm trying to say is that any product that doesn't comply with these requirements is not a medical product. And you need to sell these type of products in pharmacies. And who is going to make these products? Laboratories. And as someone said before in this conversation, the quality of the substance needs to be GMP with good manufacturing practices. Then it comes this question, where do I get the substance? You need to import the substance right now, because in Mexico we are not producing legally the cannabis, right? So you have to import the cannabinoids from a country that has legally regulated cannabis for medical purposes. You have to file before the Federal Commission Against Protection of Health Risks previous import permit. You need a sanitary license to import the substance. You need a sanitary registration. So we can do a lot. That's what I'm focusing, and I think we need to focus on that, on what we can do now, today.
So Íñigo, basically, all the companies that would like to start a business related to cannabis here in Mexico will need to import the cannabinoids from abroad. But is it legal to import cannabinoids right now, Cuauhtemoc and Íñigo?
Cuauhtemoc, do you want to answer?
Yes, well, it's legal. You have to go through a very exhausting process. with COFEPRIS and other entities to be able to do it. But I mean, it's legal. There's a process, you can do it. I believe there's only one company that's been able to do that. That's a Colombian company that was specifically for a patient doing specific things for one patient. But yeah, it's legal, you can do it, but it's a very long process that you can go through it. But I don't know if it will bring you some goods. And I totally agree with what Inigo said, that we have to be hopeful and positive of what the legislation will be and will come and what will be discussed in the chambers of representatives. But we can work now with what we have. I mean, there's, as Inigo said, the cannabis is legal in the general health law. There's specific ways to use it. There's now a legislation on medicines that give you a pathway to develop medicines with cannabis products. So I believe we can focus on that, and we can wait and be prepared for what will come. We have already a legislation that can give us some perspective of what the requirements will be and what will be the kind of licensing and all those kinds of things that we can work on right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Steve and Paul, do you want to make some questions to our friends here?
Yeah, we're actually getting close to our allotted time, Luis.
Yes.
So I think what we've agreed on is that we're going to need to do this again. And then probably we're going to need to do it again after that. There's a lot of content here, and we've just done a great job sort of introducing and identifying some of the key developments to be anticipated. But we could go on, quite frankly, for hours. There's so much texture and depth here. So I think out of respect for our audience, we're probably going to wrap up. We've used our allotted hour. I want to thank, first of all of our participants, because the ideas that are being discussed here and this sort of ear to the ground, leading edge approach is exactly what we need. Those of us that have been in the industry a long time are used to this sort of operatic cycle of getting your hopes up, having your hopes dashed, getting your hopes up, having your hopes dashed. Go fast, go slow. It's part of the industry, and it's a challenge for entrepreneurs to manage their emotions because they're dying to go. You're standing behind the start line and you have all these great ambitions and ideas, how you're going to build great companies, how you're going to benefit your society, but you still have this counterparty, the regulator. And I'm here to offer a little bit of comfort to say what's happening in Mexico in terms of the start, stop. It's hardly unique. You can just see versions of this in pretty much every cannabis economy. The trend is clear. Mexico is going to become the largest single adult use market in the world, and will probably remain so until the United States figures out how to reconcile its federal and state laws. And I have no doubt that 2021 is going to be the transformative year. And I have no doubt that many of the people, all of the people on today's webinar, are going to play a transformative role in building this economy, not just for the entrepreneurs and the investors, but for the patients, for the incarcerated, for local farmers, et cetera, et cetera. So there are so many benefits. We know this. You've heard me say this before. We can look very carefully at mature jurisdictions and see that primarily there's nothing to be afraid of here. There's just positive outcomes for every possible constituency. And I do believe that as Mexico gets more comfortable with the potential to plant, it's going to unleash an incredibly dynamic economy. And then that is going to play a meaningful role in the next country. We're looking forward to a sandwich. On the southern border of America is the federal legal Mexican cannabis economy. On the northern border is the federally legal Canadian economy. And in the middle, we'll wait for America to show the necessary leadership to really drive a huge cannabis continental economy. So I'm going to invite everybody to pay attention. We're going to have another webinar focusing on Mexico in the near future. We're going to have another strong selection of participants in thought leadership, and we're going to be right there, if you will, for when the bell is rung. This is going to be where you can position yourself by attending these webinars, learning about what are the challenges and the opportunities. I want to thank, in addition to all of our content providers today, our sponsors, Access Ventures, Zuber Lawler, CFN Media Group, Cannabis, and most significantly, for the purposes of today, Last Prisoners Project. Please, if you've enjoyed today's content, which I hope you have and believe you have, take a moment, follow the link, make a small donation or a large donation, even better, to Last Prisoners Project. Know that that money is going towards something that is tangible, the greater good, and the release and reintroduction of people that have no right to be incarcerated, that have been spending years and years languishing in prisons, not just in America, but quite frankly, across the world. I can think of no cause that is more central to the soul and the future of this industry. So please do your best to support it. Until next time, I'm Paul Rosen. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and your excitement around the industry, and we'll see you again soon. Best wishes.